What if beauty wasn't the innocent dreamer, and the beast wasn't cursed by magic, but by greed? Imagine an elderly baroness, wise and solitary, whose heart is suddenly captivated by a young poet's charm. But beneath his verses lies a darker motive. Can love survive when trust is a lie? What happens when desire is weaponized and ambition blinds the heart? And in the end, who pays the price for betrayal, the deceiver or the deceived? This is the story of Fiona and Peter, a journey of beauty and beast, though only one wears their true nature on the outside. It's a story of calculated deception, of a heart that has weathered 7 decades only to be betrayed by eyes that see not a person, but a prize. It was February 1st, 2024, when Peter Vale first set foot on the gravel drive of Rosewood Manor. The estate, nestled in the Canadian countryside, was waking from winter. Cherry trees in bloom, daffodils nodding in the breeze, and the air alive with birdsong. Yet beneath this beauty, the manor exuded a solemn grandeur, its ivy-clad walls and weathered stone hinting at secrets kept for centuries. Baroness Fiona Ashcroft, now 73, had lived alone since the death of her husband a decade prior. Her days were filled with the quiet dignity of routine, tending her gardens, overseeing the estate's affairs, and writing letters to distant friends. The townsfolk respected her, but pitied her solitude. Peter, at 29, was everything Fiona was not: vibrant, impulsive, and hungry for recognition. His poetry, though lauded in Canada's literary circles, had yet to bring him the fame or fortune he craved. He arrived at Rosewood with a plan to seduce the Baroness, unlock the estate's secrets, and secure his place among the elite. His journey has been deliberate: 3 months of research, careful networking, and finally, an invitation to the literary event hosted by Baroness Fiona Ashcroft. The past year has been unkind to Peter. His second volume of poetry has failed commercially. His publisher has dropped him, and the critics who once praised his promise now question his depth. His apartment in the city is no longer affordable. His relationship has ended with accusations of his ambition overshadowing his heart. When he hears about the reclusive Baroness, wealthy, widowed, and rumored to be seeking a writer-in-residence for her historic estate, he sees not just an opportunity but a golden ticket. That old woman must be worth millions, he thinks, as he approaches the imposing front doors, and no children to inherit it all. Just a lonely widow with more money than time left to spend it. As Peter stepped into the grand hall of Rosewood Manor, the butler's scrutinizing gaze lingered on his threadbare coat, a subtle hint of disapproval. The opulent space whispered tales of old money and secrets, with darkened oak panels and stern-faced ancestors watching from the walls. The scent of roses wafted through the air, a jarring contrast to the snow falling outside. In the manor's library, I was underway, filled with local academics and authors. At its center, Baroness Fiona Ashcroft sat poised in a velvet armchair, her silver hair styled elegantly, her face a testament to character rather than conventional beauty. Her storm cloud eyes locked onto Peter as he entered, and she welcomed him with a warm smile. "Ah, you must be Mr. Vale. We've been looking forward to hearing your work. Please join us." Peter's eyes met Fiona's as he recited his verses, watching her respond to his words. He spoke of lost glory, preserved beauty, and wisdom that outlast youth's passions. Fiona's fingers tapped gently against the arm of her chair, her ruby ring catching the firelight. When he finished, polite applause filled the room, But Fiona's response was what mattered. "You write as if you've lived far longer than your years, Mr. Vale." Peter smiled humbly. His words were carefully crafted to win her approval. As the salon ended, Fiona invited him to stay for a private tour of the greenhouse. The greenhouse was a cathedral of glass and steel, filled with roses in impossible colors. The scent of the flowers was intoxicating, and Peter felt lightheaded as he inhaled their rich fragrance. Fiona showed him the rosewood midnight, a variety her late husband had spent years developing. "They're unique to this estate," she said. "They won't grow anywhere else, believe me. Many have tried." As Peter gazed at the roses, he sensed an opportunity unfolding before him. The seeds of deception were sown, and he knew exactly how to nurture them. Fiona's tender touch as she caressed the blooms transformed her face, making her look vulnerable. The family fortune was built on what he discovered during those travels, she said, her words hanging in the air like a promise. Peter's ears pricked up at the mention of treasures, and he leaned in, eager to hear more. But Fiona's expression closed, and she changed the subject. Her eyes veiled secrets. "Family histories are often embellished, Mr. Vale. What matters is the present. These roses, this estate, the continuation of something beautiful." Peter's gaze wandered to the leather-bound journals on a nearby shelf, and Fiona quickly blocked his view. "My late husband's records, quite hardly of interest to a poet." As the days turned into weeks, Peter's residency at Rosewood Manor evolved into a subtle courtship. He read his verses to Fiona by the fire, his words painting vivid pictures of roses, wisdom, and treasures hidden in plain sight. He found her struggling with pain in her arthritic hands, and, with calculated gentleness, took over the delicate pruning she couldn't complete. One night, Fiona discovered Peter in the library, poring over old maps of the estate. "Having trouble sleeping, Mr. Vale?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Peter's smile was disarming, and he gestured to the map, his mind racing for a plausible explanation. "The history of this place is fascinating. These structures here don't exist anymore, do they?" As the weeks turned into months, Peter's proposal came, not in the greenhouse among the roses, but in the portrait gallery, beneath the stern gaze of the first Baron Ashcroft. "I'm asking for your hand, Fiona," he said, his words calculated to appeal to her desires and fears. "Not for your fortune or your title, though I won't insult your intelligence by pretending they don't matter. I'm asking because together we could ensure that what you've built, what generations before you have built, endures." Fiona's eyes searched his, and for a moment Marcus feared she saw right through him. But she smiled and said, "The servants' quarters contain a chapel rarely used these days. Would that suit you for a small ceremony?" Peter's surprise flickered across his face, and he recovered quickly. "Never," he said, sealing their agreement with a chaste kiss. As he pulled back, Peter felt a momentary chill. He had what he wanted: access to her fortune, her home, her secrets. But why did this victory taste so hollow? Because it's just the beginning, he reminded himself. The real prize was still to be discovered. The wedding was a small but elegant affair, held in the estate's chapel among arrangements of midnight roses. The villagers attended out of curiosity as much as celebration, watching the young groom in his new suit and noting how he smiled at his elderly bride. The villagers whispered among themselves, wondering how such a young man could settle for a woman twice his age. "It's quite an eyesore," one said. Another noted that he must be after her fortune. The wedding was met with doubt, whispers, and disgust from the community. As the seasons passed, Peter found himself enjoying their conversations about literature and art. Fiona was far more intelligent and perceptive than he'd anticipated, challenging his thinking and expanding his narrow worldview. Despite his growing feelings of guilt, Peter reminded himself of his ultimate goal. One day, while reshelving books in the library, Peter stumbled upon a hidden door behind a false wall. His eyes widened as he pushed aside the bookshelf, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. Fiona's expression was icy when she discovered him standing before the open panel. "What you found is none of your concern," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Peter's eyes locked onto hers, his expression a complex mixture of triumph and wariness. "We agreed to be partners," Peter said, his voice softening. "Partners don't keep secrets of this magnitude." Fiona's posture remained rigid, her eyes flashing with controlled anger. A cold war developed between them, with Peter playing the perfect husband in public, while watching Fiona with calculated patience in private. Fiona, in turn, restricted his access to certain areas of the house, subtly at first, then more overtly. The tension between them culminated on the night of the spring storm, when lightning struck the old oak tree beside the manor, sending it crashing through the roof of the greenhouse. Fiona rushed out, heedless of the rain, crying out in terror for her precious midnight roses. Peter followed, finding her amidst the devastation, frantically trying to salvage what remained of the rarest plants. In a split-second decision, Peter lunged forward, pulling Fiona back, just as a section of metal framework groaned ominously above them. Later, in the manor's kitchen, Fiona looked at Peter with new eyes. "You could have been killed," she said softly. Peter's response was simple. "So could you." Fiona's expression changed, and she led Peter to her private study, a room he had never been permitted to enter alone. Inside, she unlocked an ornate cabinet and removed a leather-bound journal with the Ashcroft family crest embossed in gold. "This is my late husband's final journal," she said. "It contains everything about the roses, about what makes them unique, about what they can do." Peter accepted the book with careful hands, his pulse racing with anticipation. As he opened the journal, his eyes widened at the first page, a detailed chemical analysis of compounds extracted from the midnight roses, with notes on their remarkable properties. Properties that, if the journal was to be believed, included effects on human cellular regeneration that defied modern science. Peter's mind raced, calculating the value of what he'd discovered. Not millions, billions, perhaps trillions. The pharmaceutical implications alone could rewrite the rules of modern medicine and wealth. "Show me everything," Peter said, his voice filled with conviction. "Not as your heir or your protege, but as your partner. Let me help you protect this legacy." The words came automatically, the practiced deception continuing even as his heart pounded with the enormity of his discovery. In the firelight, their shadows merged on the wall behind them, neither young nor old, but something in between. A pact sealed with deception on one side and fragile trust on the other. As spring melted into summer, the greenhouse was rebuilt, stronger than before. Fiona and Peter worked together to save the damaged roses, spending long hours nurturing the survivors back to health. The midnight roses began to flourish again, their dark blooms filling the greenhouse with their intoxicating scent. Fiona shared the secrets of rosewood with Peter, taking him to the hidden laboratory beneath the library, where the Ashcroft family had studied the rose's properties for generations. Peter proved to be a diligent student, his meticulous attention to detail serving him well in the precise work of tending to the special plants. But as he learned more, his plans solidified. In secret, Peter made contact with a pharmaceutical executive, and their conversations were carefully coded. The message was clear. Peter had access to something revolutionary, something worth an enormous sum to the right buyer. As autumn approached, Fiona began to notice concerning patterns. Small amounts of the processed rose extract went missing, and pages were carefully removed from certain journals. Peter began receiving letters with foreign postmarks that he read and immediately burned. One evening, Fiona deliberately knocked over a vial of clear liquid, sending Peter to fetch the special cleaning solution. While he was away, she quickly examined his notes, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. Detailed formulas for concentrating the rose's compounds to levels the Ashcroft family had always considered dangerous, along with shipping instructions to an address in Switzerland. Fiona's face was composed when Peter returned, but her racing heart betrayed her. "I've been thinking we should take a trip soon," she said casually. "Perhaps to Geneva?" Peter's face revealed nothing, but Fiona noticed how his hands still momentarily hovered over his work. As the days passed, Fiona began taking a concentrated formula of the midnight rose extract in secret. The transformation wasn't dramatic, but to close observers, it was clear that the Baroness was somehow growing younger. Simultaneously, she began making changes to the estate's security, installing new locks on the laboratory door and implementing different access protocols to the greenhouse. The tension between them culminated on the night Fiona caught Peter in the laboratory at midnight, carefully packing vials of extract into a specially designed case. "Going somewhere, my dear?" she asked, her voice steady. Peter turned slowly, his face composed, despite being caught in the act. "I expected you to be asleep," he said. Fiona stepped into the room, her eyes locked onto the case. "Clearly, just as you expected me to remain an aging widow, content with your superficial affections." The air was thick with tension as Fiona confronted Peter about his betrayal. "Tell me, was any of it real?" she asked, her voice bitter. "Any moment between us?" Peter's eyes flickered, and for a moment, Peter saw something genuine in his expression. But it was too late. The damage was done. Samples had already been sent, and analysis was underway. "The secret of rosewood was already escaping," he said, with a smirk on his face. Fiona's face went pale as she realized the enormity of Peter's betrayal. "Then you have no idea what you've done," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Fiona doesn't call the authorities. She doesn't scream, threaten, or plead. Instead, she simply turns and walks away, leaving Peter alone in the laboratory with the case of stolen extracts. In the days that follow, an eerie calm descends over Rosewood Manor. Fiona withdraws completely, spending hours alone in the greenhouse or her private study. Peter continues his preparations, waiting for the final confirmation from his Swiss contacts that the samples he's sent are viable and that the deal will proceed. The snowflakes gently fell over Havenswood, casting a serene silence over Rosewood Manor. Fiona summoned Peter to the greenhouse, where she stood amidst her precious midnight roses, looking younger than he had ever seen her. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, and her eyes sparkled with a quiet intensity. "I received a call today from Dr. Werner Klausmann," she said, her voice dripping with cold satisfaction. "Does the name sound familiar?" Peter froze, his mind racing. Klausmann was his primary contact in Switzerland. Fiona's eyes seemed to bore into his soul as she continued, "He sends his regrets, but your arrangement has been terminated." Peter's face remained impassive, but his heart sank. He knew he had been outmaneuvered. As Fiona moved among the roses, touching them with familiar tenderness, Peter realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. He had seen only an isolated old woman, ripe for exploitation, but he hadn't considered the networks, the safeguards, the contingencies she might have in place. "What have you done?" Peter asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Fiona turned to face him fully, her expression not angry but profoundly disappointed. "I've protected what my family has always protected," she said. "The samples you sent have been destroyed. Your contacts have been persuaded that continuing this pursuit would be unwise. And as for you—" She paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "You will leave Rosewood tonight. In the library's safe, you'll find enough money to start a new life somewhere far from here. You will never speak of what you've seen, what you've learned. If you do—" Peter attempted to manipulate her, but Fiona cut him off. "I know everything, Peter. I have from the beginning. I knew who you were the moment you walked through my door. A talented opportunist, intelligent but morally adrift. I thought perhaps, given time, you might become something more. I was wrong." The realization hit Peter like a physical blow. She had never been fooled. His elaborate deception and his careful manipulations had all been transparent to her. He felt a pang of shame as he looked into her eyes, seeing not only his failure as a husband, but his failure as a human being. "Why marry me at all?" Peter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Fiona smiled sadly. "Because sometimes, even at my age, hope overrides wisdom. I hoped that exposure to something truly meaningful, the work of generations, the responsibility of guardianship, might awaken something better in you. And because I was lonely, and you were charming and beautiful, and for brief moments I could almost believe you cared. I had great plans for us, but it turns out that you're a beast pretending to be something beautiful. Even when you've been caught trying to manipulate me, you will leave my house with nothing." As Eleanor removed her wedding ring, Marcus knew he had no choice but to leave. "By dawn, I want you gone," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Marcus turned full of regret and walked away, the weight of his betrayal and his shame settling heavily upon him. As Peter walked away from Rosewood Manor, he couldn't shake off the feeling of shame and regret. Fiona's words echoed in his mind. "Some betrayals can't be undone, Peter. Some trust, once broken, can never be restored." In the days that followed, Peter's world began to unravel. The pharmaceutical company he had been working with disavowed any knowledge of him, and his reputation in the literary world was tarnished. He found himself isolated, with no one willing to trust him. As the curtains closed on the journey of Peter and Fiona, a profound truth lingered in the air. The story whispered a lesson to those who listened closely, that the pursuit of power and wealth, when driven by greed and deceit, can lead to ruin. It reminded us that trust, once broken, is hard to mend, and that loyalty and integrity are the foundations upon which strong relationships are built. In the end, Peter's ambition consumed him, leaving him with nothing but the echoes of what could have been. Fiona, on the other hand, stood as a testament to the enduring power of wisdom, foresight, and the careful guarding of one's values. Her story became a beacon, cautioning against the dangers of underestimating others and the importance of staying true to oneself. As the snow continued to fall gently over Rosewood Manor, it covered the footprints of the past, leaving behind a serene landscape. Yet the memory of Peter and Fiona's story remained, a reminder of the delicate balance between hope and vulnerability, and the importance of nurturing the bonds that tie us to one another. In the silence, a truth resonated, that true strength lies not in power or wealth, but in the integrity of our actions and the trust we build with others.